Okay.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Carlos Salguero from Marketer Brothers. Ricardo saying hello from Florida. I'm in Denver. We have a very special guest today to our Marketer Brothers channel. And if it's the first time you're watching this, we wanted to welcome you and let you know what we're all about. Marketer Brothers is a passion project that my brother Ricardo and I started in honor of my dad that passed away early on this year. He was an entrepreneur by nature, started from humble beginnings, and over his lifetime, we saw him become a fighter. He was a cancer survivor twice, and he lost it all a couple times and recovered everything, and then left a legacy not only financially, but left a legacy of hard work, of persistence, and instilled in us this passion for not only building businesses, but helping people and also adding value to others. So Marketer Brothers is all about adding value to the lives of people. He lost it all a couple times and recovered really put a message out to the world that quitting is not an option. So left a legacy. Today, we have a very special guest, like I said. Justin Legg is a retired Navy SEAL, and he has an amazing story for us today that he will share with us. Justin, welcome to Marketer Brothers. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you. We shared your profile in our page, but it would be awesome if you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you grow up, and what made you go into the Navy SEALs.
Okay. So if I'm just going onto my Facebook right now just to share this so that
yeah, go ahead.
Do you think? So while you share this, I actually can start a little bit how I met Justin, because it's it's amazing the mindset that you have, man, and your fellow brothers have about life and about things. And I just wanted to share real quick while you share it in your page. I had the honor of actually running with the Spartans Beast with Justin.
It's amazing.
With Justin on about a month and a half ago. And Justin was actually one of our honorees with Operation Enduring Warrior. And I didn't know him personally, and it is, we had all the honorees there, like Chris Wolf and others that have disabilities that are visible, meaning they are in a wheelchair or they've been amputated a leg and stuff like that. And Justin was one of those guys that he was there. He was very calm, but I didn't know his story. And during the actual race, man, I asked you about your story. I asked you who you were and what did you do, and you started telling your story, and I was like, man, this guy is amazing. I mean, just what you've gone through. But what I'm trying to say is not, and I'm sure you've seen this in as far as disabled vets, is a lot of people just see the physical part of it there, right? That what's obvious to the blind eye. And as you're going to tell us throughout your life, I mean, you've been able to overcome things that most people can't ever even fathom. So thank you for your resilience, man. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. And just it's an honor to be able to share your story that I was able to experience it. You telling it to me firsthand, and I'll go through a few things that what you told me at the end of the interview, at the end of the race. It just inspired me, and it just stayed with me for a long time. So thanks, Justin.
My pleasure, dude, and thanks for the nice words.
No problem, brother. So yeah, man. Like my brother was saying, what tell us about your youth. How did you become a Navy SEAL? How did you enlist? All that good stuff. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, so I grew up in New Jersey. Dad was a cop, mom was a florist. You know, they work their asses off to give their kids everything. So I'm the youngest of three. I was the miracle baby. You know, my sisters are 8 and 9 years older than me. So the oops, the miracle, whatever you want to call it. Grew up wrestling, playing football, playing in the woods. You know, mom and dad would let me roam for miles in the woods behind our house and by myself, you know, just learning how to track deer, fishing, goofing around. Was not really very sociable until I got, you know, much higher into high school. Was always a good student. But when I was in, I think it was 7th grade, me and my buddy who I would always pal around with, Kevin, Kevin came on the course with us. You know, I brought him down with me last year, and this year he's a Navy vet as well. Kevin and I went to this local video store, and we saw this film. Oh, Navy SEALs. That looks cool. Yeah, the one with Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Yep. So everybody can thank Charlie Sheen for my service. He was the inspiration. Not the greatest role model, but nonetheless, it worked for me. You know, right then and there, I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. You know, and then I started reading some books about SEALs and, you know, getting a more realistic perspective of what they actually do and what goes into it. I decided, yeah, that's for me. So, you know, all through high school, wrestling and playing football, I'd always work out like, you know, with my mind that I got to do this like I'm going to Buds. Got to be, you know, harder, faster, stronger than everybody on the team if I could. And then we had 2 brothers from my high school that both went to the Naval Academy, and that's how I learned about the Naval Academy. I got in touch with them. They said, hey, do you want to be an officer in the Navy? You can be an officer in the SEAL teams if you make it. I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Free education, you know, no loans afterwards. Plus I'll be in the Navy. I got a chance of becoming a SEAL right out of the academy. So that's how I got into Buds.
Yeah, man, it's an awesome opportunity. I guess people don't realize it. Just the great opportunity, just not just to learn, but like you just said, you know, getting free education. You know, as a foreign citizen, and I wasn't able to go to enlist or anything, but people don't realize that all the free education you actually can get by serving. You know, and I think you even took advantage of that after you served, right?
Yeah. So eventually I became medically retired, spent a year and a half off recovering. And then I used a program called vocational rehabilitation. So anybody who is, you know, out of the service and rated a disability 30% or higher can take advantage of this program. And there's many opportunities in it. Me having graduated college already with a bachelor's degree, and now I would have to be working in a different field because, you know, as we'll talk about, my physical capabilities were greatly diminished. I went back to school and got a master's degree through the VA in a whole different field. So I've been able to reap quite a bit of benefits through service. That wasn't the intent of serving, but I'm sure glad it was available.
Yeah, I mean, it might as well take advantage if it's available. I think probably a lot of people don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when I was doing my master's degree, it was, you know, mandatory 4 courses per semester. And I was doing 5 or 6 every semester, and one semester even pulled off 7. So I figured, you know, taxpayers are paying for this. I'm going to give them their money's worth and get as much education out of it as I can. And it was no extra money to pile on extra courses.
Yeah.
So I did it.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm thankful for that part. You know, it's great to, after your service and you are transitioning to your civilian life, one of the best things I feel you can do is take advantage of any education you can grab onto so that you can have a successful transition. So tell us a little bit more about your life in the service. Where were you deployed and a little bit of that. And then, I maybe let's go into, you know, some of the challenges you've seen while you were serving, because, you know, you got sick while serving, correct?
I did. So I graduated BUD/S in 2001. Officially became a SEAL, the day before Thanksgiving in 2001. Went on my first deployment late 2002. It was not as part of a SEAL team or SEAL platoon. I was attached to a group out of CENTCOM, or the Central Command, and we were deployed through various places in the Arabian Peninsula, the Horn of Africa, doing, you know, security assessment work for American installations or installations that were used by Americans. Stuff that, you know, there's a lot of classified information with it, but it's not as James Bond sexy as it sounds. It was a lot of writing reports, and it's just the nature of the information that was in the reports that made all of that classified. Came back, and SEAL Team, I was at SEAL Team 7 at the time. I was actually a plank owner of SEAL Team 7. So when every command starts up in the Navy, the original crew is called the plank owners. Right? And that comes from an old tradition that, you know, any crew that was on the ship for the first time that the ship was commissioned was entitled to one plank from the deck of the ship when it was decommissioned.
Yeah. Oh, okay, sure.
So after I got back from that first deployment, SEAL Team 7 was already in workups. The platoons were already formed. And one of the platoons had to fire an AOIC, or Assistant Officer in Charge. And right away, they grabbed me up as soon as I came back. So I got in with that platoon. We deployed to Iraq in 2003. September 2003 through April of 2004. Almost 9-month deployment. It was supposed to be about 6, turned into 9. But I was more than happy to do that. We did a lot of direct action missions over there. Direct action being to, you know, attempt to capture high-value targets, persons of interest. On one of these is where I initially, you know, I guess got the first injury, you would say, that may have contributed to what happened later on. Huge target, lots of buildings, lots of rooms. We get all the way to the last room, and it's the only locked door in the whole place, and all of our means of gaining entry to locked rooms were broken or, you know, already exhausted. And so I had to kick through this big door with, you know, chain around it, you know, metal door in concrete. It took us forever. We ended up tearing down the door, and my buddy had thrown a crash grenade in there. Look, you know, looking in retrospect, that was probably a little bit of a mistake with a locked door and no noise coming from the other side, but who knows what could have been in there. Well, what happened was, we think there was a lot of residue on the ground. Definitely tear gas was there, but there was something else, because as soon as I walked into the room, I saw nothing but a mesh bag hanging from the middle of the room with gas masks in it. Nothing else I could see in the room. And, you know, I could taste the CS, or the tear gas, right away. That was no big deal, but I immediately started to get the response to feel like I had to vomit.
And you didn't have a gas mask on yourself, right?
Oh, no, I didn't. Nope. So I turned around, you know, kept everybody else from coming in the room, turned around and started vomiting right away, pretty violently. And then vomited several more times throughout the night, had a crappy night. And talking with doctors much, much later, they believe that what happened was I was introduced to a very small dose of a nerve agent. Because one of the very first signs of a nerve agent is convulsions, which also applies to your stomach. Your stomach convulses, you throw up. No way to clearly, definitively say that that's what it was, but all indicators point to that. So we get finished with that deployment. Went to a new team. About halfway through that, I was in Louisiana. We have a riverboat team down there, and I was a training officer there. So halfway through that, my home got flooded by Hurricane Katrina. While trying to tear down my home, I was down in New Orleans, helping with some of the recovery work, taking FEMA guys around, mapping the city, looking at stuff. And I got in the water a couple of times, not on purpose. So there's a lot of chemicals in that water, from all the refinery spills that are known carcinogens. And that's the second thing that we think could have led to what ultimately became leukemia.
And this happened within what time period? The whole, deployed in the Katrina incident.
So gas happened, in, I think, about March 04. Then April 05, then the Katrina, and then June 06 is when I was actually diagnosed with cancer. But I was in such good shape at the point that it took a very long time for it to progress. And they think by the time I got diagnosed, they thought I probably already had it for 4 or 5, even maybe 6 months. I started feeling the effects for sure in February, late February, early March. And it was just pain throughout my bones. It started on the left side of my rib cage, worked up to my sternum, the right side of my rib cage, then my shoulders and my hips. I noticed my physical abilities were starting to decline. Working out was getting harder. And it finally got to the point that on a 5-mile run, which would have been nothing for me, I mean, I did show up still half drunk some mornings and run and do a 10-mile run and keeping up with, probably, the top 10% of the guys at the team. And we had some fast guys there. So when my legs ground to a halt on a 5-mile run, not that I was like tired and wanted to walk, I just could not get my legs going faster than a walk.
Like your body wouldn't let you.
Yeah, I knew something was way wrong. We'd already been doing all kinds of tests and we couldn't find anything. So the doc just, he started from the beginning with just the simple, most basic blood test, just to see what my red blood cell counts were, my white blood cell counts, and all. We didn't have a medical clinic there on the base where we worked because it was co-located with a space center. So I drove over to this other base, get the blood test, and it was so messed up that he called me while I'm driving back and sent me back to the hospital to get another blood test because they just thought it was too wildly wrong. By the time I get that second one, he calls me, my wife calls me in the middle of it and says, "What's this with you having cancer? Why didn't you tell me this?" I had no clue what was going on. Apparently he had called my wife and said that I needed to go up to Bethesda the next day for evaluation for leukemia without telling me first.
No,
God, I wanted to kill that guy for calling my wife and doing that to her. So we go up to Bethesda the next day. Apparently the doctor thought I was going to be medevaced in, and I come strolling into her office at 4 in the afternoon. And we started talking. She didn't think it was going to be anything big when she saw me walking in that kind of shape. She thought it was going to be one of these weird blood viruses that you get overseas or from getting dumped into Katrina water. And you take medicine for a year and you're better. But no. Got a blood draw. We sat around for a little bit. We walked right back into her office, and the first thing my wife sees on the screen is something about leukemia. She's like, "Justin, why does that say leukemia?" I'm like, "Leukemia is cancer. I don't have cancer." Doc walks in about 10 seconds later, sits down, looks right at me and goes, "You have cancer." Wow. That's a hammer to the chest.
Oh yeah, and considering you were in excellent shape. You were all of a sudden this happened to you. Now that's crazy.
I mean, I was
prognosis.
I was 5'9", 200 pounds, and around 10% body fat.
Wow.
I was I was kind of a walking ball of muscle at that point. Yeah, tooting my own horn. But
well, I mean, you were an active SEAL, man, and you know, in deployment.
Yeah, that's not abnormal in the teams. I mean,
yeah.
I was just, another one of those guys.
Yeah, you were a SEAL in SEAL shape, basically. That's
yeah. So she tells me that. First thing I do is look her back right in the eyes and say, "Can I still be a SEAL?" And she says, "No." When I asked, "How many SEALs have you treated before?" She said, "None. You're my first." I was like, "Well, watch this." So, that night I get a big catheter placed right in my jugular. No anesthetic or anything because it's a military hospital. They don't need to waste that for just, sticking a big needle in your neck. Started chemo the next morning and went through 5 months of, 5 big rounds of chemo. And I refer to a round of chemo as one treatment. When you have this type of leukemia, you have to be inpatient. And so each round consisted of 8 to 11 treatments of chemo. So I did 53 in total.
Jeez.
And the type of leukemia we had I say we because, my wife is part of it. It's like, to me, I just feel like, she's having leukemia with me. It's just, I'm the one who's carrying it. But we got the really bad news about a week later after they did all the genetic testing to look at what kind of subtype it was. And I had what's called the Philadelphia chromosome. Now, this abnormality makes the leukemia replicate about 80 times faster. So we found out what I was experiencing with all that bone pain is that those white blood cells that were bad were replicating so fast they were all getting stuck in the bone marrow and swelling my bones from the inside out. And that's what was making me so sensitive. But when she sat me down to talk about that, it was my wife and I sitting on my bed, my parents sitting on the little guest love seat in the room. I guess the nice thing about being an officer, you get your own room. Yeah. Which is kind of fucked up when I think about it. It's like, why doesn't everybody get their own room? But anyway, I'm digressing. She said, so I said, well, let's hear it. What's the probability of surviving this? And she said, well, it's about 15% long term. And you could just kind of feel and almost hear everybody's hearts drop in the room. Except for me. Because we had 117 or 116 guys start my BUDS class. 17 of those originals went all the way through and graduated. Plus we picked up a few from other classes. I was like, so that's, out of all the guys that started my BUDS class, about 14% actually just made it all the way through. So, and I was just doing fine in BUDS, so I'll be fine with this. That's no problem.
So in your mind, the odds were not as bad because you've had to go through a challenge like that. It's almost impossible for most people before.
Right, and and I did well in BUDS. I wasn't the best guy or anything, but I was the second or third best at a lot of things.
What do you think that? What's the reason behind that? What do you think that you were able to, gain that 14%?
A big thing for me was that I had always trained really, really hard all through high school, all through college. I had put a good 10 years of work in before I even got to BUDS. And I had always tried to push myself into painful situations just to be able to endure it. I don't know, I guess I have a naturally sunny disposition. It was something I wanted to do. I enjoyed it. I can honestly say every day at BUDS was fun. There was at least an hour a day where I was just like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. This is so much fun. playing in the surf, rolling around in the sand, climbing obstacle courses, carrying boats, lifting up logs. This is great stuff. I love to work out. And there was honestly an hour a day where it's like, oh my God, let this stop. Please let this stop.
Ring the bell, right?
No, not ring the bell. Just like, when is this going to be over? Yeah. And it got to like, sometimes you're just like, all right, just worry about this next race, like this next 30-second race or 5-minute race or whatever.
But you enjoyed most of it, so you were actually loving butts.
Yeah, and I mean, if you ask any of my classmates, I always had a smile on my face. And I was always able to laugh at a lot of things, and especially like when it would get really painful, where there's nothing else you can do. You can either cry or laugh, and well, there was TV cameras in front of us the whole time, so I'm not going to cry on national television.
Might as well laugh.
So I laughed at it, and laughing at the pain helped quite a bit.
Perspective.
Oh yeah,
sure. So I mean, I'm sure your family is very in distress after the news of you having cancer. What is it that carried you through the treatment months, and were you still serving during the?
Yes, yeah, I was still on active duty, and I had plans to go back to active duty, operational duty, despite what my doctor said. And I guess that was the biggest thing that kept me going, was I'm not going to let cancer beat me. It's just cancer. I can beat this. I've done plenty of hard things. I got through it. I kept exercising as much as I could through the chemo. I would do lunges around the ward with my, carry my IV pole around getting chemo, or, whatever other fluids they were putting into me. I would grab dictionaries in the patient library and do arm circles and curls and, whatever I could with those, put them on the floor so I could do push-ups so my hands didn't touch the floor because the floor is dirty.
So you were adapting. You were still trying and adapting, trying to keep yourself strong and just have that strong mindset of just keep going no matter what.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm naturally very competitive. Always have been. I mean, you can ask, my friend Kevin, who came down with us to the Spartan Beast.
Mm-hmm.
We've known each other for literally our entire lives. Our earliest memories are of each other in diapers. He'll tell you I was competitive since I was about 4 years old. So with cancer, it was just another competition. I was like, I'm going to win. Cancer's not going to win. I'm going to win. And I'm going to prove that doctor wrong because she said, no, I can't go back to active duty. I'm like, well, watch this. I'm going to do it. So for me, it was all a big competition. I just made it that way. I'm not saying, I didn't have nights where I didn't cry, where I didn't get pissed off, where I didn't, just sit with my wife and ask, why me? Why did this have to happen to me? It just happens. But I'd let myself have my little pity party, get through it, and get back to beating cancer.
Yeah, just keep going.
So you complete your treatment. At what point do they clear you?
Well, I had to have a bone marrow transplant after that because of the high rate of relapse with that type of cancer. The bone marrow transplant would help prevent that. So I got a lot of really nasty side effects from the bone marrow transplant. A disease called Graft-versus-Host Disease, the graft being what your donor gives you and you being the host. So it attacked my eyes, my skin, my whole digestive tract from opening to opening, from entrance to exit, my liver and my lungs. And after,
the body rejecting the
it's kind of the opposite of your body rejecting an organ. It's your donor is now giving you their immune system, and that immune system is floating around in you. It looks at everything as foreign, like a bacteria or a virus, and says, okay, let's attack it all. So it could attack any organ system. It generally does not attack bone or muscle. But all organs are fair game, skin being an organ as well. So those side effects started happening almost immediately after the transplant, within a week or two. I finished up the transplant and the rehab there in Seattle in February 2007, February, March. I came back to the East Coast and worked at one of the administrative headquarters groups and did all the operation work that, officers have to go and do office work, in between operational deployments. So that was, perfect rotation for me to do the office work and rehab. Fought through most of the really bad side effects. Most of it went away except for, my skin and my lungs. The skin eventually got mostly better by the time about a year and a couple months later, I was reloaded as a platoon commander at SEAL Team 8. And so I started as a platoon commander. I was back operational again. So I proved that doctor wrong. And she was happy to hear that. But what was going on was there's a lot of medicine you have to take to manage that. And as I was being weaned off that medicine, which is pretty normal for a bone marrow transplant, eventually most people can get off of that medicine. A doctor of mine, a Navy doctor who wasn't experienced with transplants, thought he knew better than the transplant doctors giving him the advice, and dropped me off of one of my medicines when I was on a low dose. I went from 80 milligrams all the way down to 10. And it should have gone much slower from 10 down to 0. And he just dropped me off at 10, which, now my body's without that medicine, didn't have a chance to get used to the small doses. And that graft-versus-host disease came back with a vengeance. My liver enzymes all shot up to about 10 to 12 times normal, which sent the doctors into a tizzy. I got this bad rash all over my body. It was like mottled red looking skin. It really irritated if you had poison ivy or poison oak or a chemical burn from like chlorine. And my head, actually, my face turned purple. I mean, not like light purple like a grape, or purple like Barney.
Shit, that's nuts, man.
And then it's god awful painful. It's god awful painful. It was stinging. I remember I was in an Arabic class, and I'd been scratching my head all day in the Arabic class so bad that I started bleeding from the back of my head from where I've been scratching so bad. I mean, the soles of my feet, the palms of my hands, blisters in it. I remember doing pull-ups one day, and some of those blisters ruptured, and then my palms are bleeding when I drop off the bar. We did an obstacle course. We get back, and one of my guys says, "Hey, LT, you got a little too much sunblock on." I hadn't put any sunblock on, and I realized it was my skin sloughing off of my head from like rubbing up against ropes and pieces of wood in the obstacle course. So it was pretty rough. So
the thing is that you were still active duty. You were still working while all this is happening.
Yeah. Yep. I was being a platoon commander, and it got to the point where things were getting bad enough that I had to be relieved of my job as a platoon commander. I knew I had to resign, and I was talking to the commanding officer, but I told him I couldn't say the words "I resign," so he had to relieve me, which was probably the most awful day of my life. I mean, I remember after holding back the tears, but he could tell it was killing me. I went and sat in my my equipment locker, big cage, and hung stuff up, uniforms up around the inside of the locker, and sat in there and cried for about 20 minutes. I was like, that's like 15 years of my life and all the dedication I put into it to get to the platoon commander spot. And being a platoon commander it may not be the pinnacle of a SEAL officer's career, but it is definitely the most fun operational portion of a SEAL officer's career. That's what everybody's really looking forward to. Because you're the guy out in the field calling the shots and running the show. And I'd beaten all the odds and got so close, and a stupid mistake ruined it all. That was tough. Still is tough.
I bet.
Oh yeah. Change your life completely.
I mean, look, I think it's amazing that you had all kinds of things that happened up to this point that could have been an excuse for you to say, I'm out. But you were so passionate about your service and you loved it so much that it was part of your life. You know, one thing you said about you and your wife is that you guys endured this disease together. You guys were a unit, you know, which I think it's really the way that marriages and
absolutely
have to be. You guys are a unit, and now you refuse to quit. I think it's amazing. You get relieved the duty. How long did it take you to kind of get back to normalcy on you know, man, I'm done with this length of time in my life and I've accomplished so much. What's next?
Well,
you're still sick at this point, right? I mean, you're still sick at this point. You still got to take care of that.
Oh yeah.
Of that disease that you got from the bone marrow transplant, right?
Yes. Yeah. I still have to deal with that. So I'm still rehabbing, trying to deal with the side effects of that, trying to get everything to go away. And we tried a lot of really funky treatments that would take way too long to explain here. They seemed like they were working, and I was really hoping I would have one last shot as a platoon commander. There was still enough time for me to do it. But those treatments stopped working, and everything else had calmed down but my lungs, and my lungs just kept descending. So I was being seen in Richmond at the time, in Richmond, Virginia. And doctors said that, like, look, we see where this is headed with your lungs. You're probably going to need a double lung transplant in a couple of years. Let's see if let's take a biopsy, an actual chunk of your lung out, and see if we can figure out something that will be able to prevent that and stop this whole mess. So they do the surgery. I never heal up right because we didn't realize how scarred my lungs were. You know, within a few days, one of my lungs collapsed. I had to go back in and reinflate it. A couple of days later, you know, I still have tubes hanging out of my chest. That hole in my lung never healed up right. My one lung collapses, and I can feel it going bad. And so much air leaked out of that lung into my chest cavity. They call it a tension pneumothorax, where all that other air pushes, or well, not the healthy lung, but at least the inflated one. And so I went into a full respiratory failure. Lungs just quit working. And I was trying my best to keep breathing. Got put on the crash cart, got wheeled through the hospital. I still remember the lights going over my head. As we're going, I'm just staring up and watching the lights, and everybody around me is frantic. They're trying to shove the bag on my face, and they get the bag on crooked. It's over my mouth. I'm swatting that away, and they're trying to tell me not to do that. I'm trying to tell them I can't breathe with that thing on my face. Long story short, I woke up 13 days later. I went into a coma. My lungs quit. Fucking quitters. They wrung out on me. And I had to put me on a machine to keep my lungs pumping and keep me breathing and give my body a chance to rest so that my lungs could start working again on their own. And eventually, somewhere in that coma, my lungs started working again on their own, but they didn't think I was healed up enough. So then they kept me out with drugs for like the last 5 days. And then waking up out of that drug-induced haze was just insane. so many hallucinations. It was wild. But so I come out of the coma and we figure out I got about 3 months to live if I don't get new lungs.
How long were you in a coma for?
About 2 weeks.
Okay.
So they moved me down to Duke University to get a double lung transplant. And I'd been in bed so long at that time I couldn't stand on my own too. So I had to learn how to stand and walk 1 mile. You know, I had a walker with a bunch of oxygen attached to it so I could get all the oxygen I needed. My lungs were only down to 13% of normal function at that time. And I had to learn, and I had lost 60 pounds from the coma, from just laying in bed. My body ate itself. So now here I am at 137, and I had already broken my back from a helicopter crash. And now that, when I had all the muscle, it wasn't a problem. Now that I didn't have any of that muscle to support it, it was a problem.
Well, you omitted the broken back in this whole story.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're trying to keep this moving. I mean, this story really takes about 6 hours to tell the right way with all the details.
Amazing.
But yeah, we
you still have your own lungs, or did you have the transplant already?
No, I hadn't had the transplant. But long story short, I ended up learning how to walk the mile in a very, very painful and haphazard fashion. Got put on the list to receive lungs after I was able to do that. And the very next day I got called. Literally 24 hours and 7 minutes after I was listed. They called me to say, get your ass to the hospital. We got lungs for you.
Well, what you were telling me at the race is that nowadays you get moved up and down the list based on how bad you are, right? How critical you are.
Right.
And at this point, you were so critical that you said, what, 23 minutes?
No, I said, 24 hours and 7 minutes. So 1 day.
Which is nothing. I mean, people wait for a transplant for years, right?
Well, for lungs, usually it's months.
Okay.
Like 3 to 6 months, because if you're needing a lung transplant, you're not going to last years.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't make it to the transplant. It's based on need and also on what the long-term outlook is for survivability if you do get new lungs. And so they give you this score. My score was pretty high. It put me right to.
Wow. So then they take you to the hospital, and then you have the transplant.
Yeah.
How long did that take to recover from that one?
Well, I got out of the hospital in about 12 or 13 days, which was really fast. But it was just, I was up and walking within 8 hours of the surgery ending. Yeah. Really tough. Really tough. I went through, 2 times where my heart went into just such a severe arrhythmia that it was at around 270 beats a minute, because your heart gets pissed off when it gets its buddies cut away and gets new buddies shoved in and sewn on. I remember I got paddled one time while I was still kind of half awake. It takes about 3 months before I finally get back and go back to the teams. And so this is 2010. I finally go back to work about October 2010 after the transplant in July. And at this point, now I know I'm going to be retired, but I'm back at the team at least. I'm at the administrative headquarters group again, and just doing work there while I can, and working out with the team as much as I could, trying to get back in shape and recover some of myself.
How was it though? Like, I mean, you've gotten through all of this, man, and then you get 2 fresh lungs. I mean, and it takes years to recover this. So but you're going back to work almost right away. I mean, your mindset is incredible. I mean, it's like, all right, just get me off these machines or whatever so that I can get back to work.
Pretty much. I mean, I was up and walking around and breathing much easier. You know, I went from having lungs that were so scarred up, I could feel them raking the inside of my ribs as I would breathe in and out, to having lungs that didn't hurt at all when I would breathe. You know, now, I'm not getting the optimal amount of oxygen. And what we found out was that during my surgery, it took so long to get my lungs out that some of his lungs started dying. Plus, he had larger lungs than what would fit in my chest. So only got about 60% of total lungs. I only have 60% of a normal set of lungs. And from, I guess, the sutures that they had to do, some of the tissue maybe dying, whatever, I was really only getting about 35 to 40% of the oxygen in every breath that I should get compared to a person with their own native lungs.
Wow.
So everything was still incredibly difficult.
And this was how long ago?
That was 9 years ago. 9.5 years ago now.
So now you have fresh lungs. You start going back to work. You started trying to work out, which is great because that I believe probably helped you recover more lung capacity. How has been life in this last 9 years for you?
Terribly difficult is an understatement. You know, one of the things I do want to address before we talk more about some of the things I've done along the way is that it involved massive depression at points.
I can imagine, man.
You know, you have to take a pile of medicine. I guess if you guys can see this, all right, that's what I have to take every day. I've already taken this box. I'm going to take this one once we get done. And then I got 2 more to take tonight. That's the rest of my life. That's about 25 pills. Those things mess you up. They mess with your head. They mess with your body. You know, they mess with your sleep, your energy. I mean, I wake up at best, if I've had a great sleep, feeling like my battery's at 70%. And just the emotions it runs you through. I would go from like the Incredible Hulk to like I'm in menopause. It's insane. It would get me down for years at a time. In fact, the worst was, probably the past 2 years up until, all right, so this previous April, I just started really coming out of it, which I was in a bad depression for about 2 years. I mean, I'm talking like not showering for over a week kind of depression.
Yeah.
Right. Like, more deodorant, more cologne, it's good. I really don't give a damn. You know, a lot of times I had gotten past the point where, you know, at one point I was thinking about committing suicide before I even had to get the lungs, because of some of the medicine I was on was actually making me a little bit crazy. And I'd gotten past that point about actually thinking about doing it. But man, I'll tell you, if I said I wouldn't have been happy if a truck hit me and killed me, I'd be lying. There were some times where I'm like, please let the Acme safe fall out of the sky. Where is the Wile E. Coyote when you need him? It was god awful. But
what helped you pull through?
My wife, mostly my wife. A lot of it was just that never quit attitude that I developed over the years and, you know, kind of honed through the teams. A lot of it was the fact that I had gone through progressively worse things and progressively more difficult things. I mean, if I had gone straight from being a healthy guy to, boom, you lost 60 pounds and crappy lungs and now you have to learn how to walk a mile to do it, If I hadn't had buds, if I hadn't had, some trials during the teens, if I hadn't had cancer, if I hadn't had to deal with the bone marrow transplant, I would have never got through that. And like I said, my wife was incredibly supportive. And I tell her the biggest thing for me that she did was that, she got very, very involved in it. She knew everything about what was going on. And when I was in the worst state before I got my lungs, I was on like 30 liters of oxygen a minute blowing up my nose. And I couldn't push myself up in bed without getting drastically out of breath. Knowing that she was there during the day for, even if it was only 8 hours, or she'd usually stay for 12, 15 hours, knowing she was there gave me that break, that mental break that I'm like, okay, I don't have to fight the whole time because she's here. And if something happens, I know she'll do the right thing, get the right people, make sure the right thing happens for me. And so she gave me that mental break because you just can't fight 24/7 for 73 days in a row.
No.
And I can pinpoint the one day where it was just like, I don't know if I can fight any longer. I mean, I was, we say in buds and a lot, take things day to day, or, from meal to meal, or one test at a time. And I got down to this one day I was going one breath at a time, just literally seconds at a time. Just breathe again. Just breathe again. And it was that day that she was there that I was like, oh my God, thank God she is here right now. That was the defining factor. But, I know a lot of veterans deal with the depression of, in a lot of cases, losing physical ability. People lose limbs, people lose eyesight, people get burned. They lose physical capability, they lose the type of appearance that they used to have. I've changed a lot in my facial structure and look. I'm the only man in my family that doesn't have a full head of hair, or that, there's a lot that goes into it. And especially having your job taken away from you through no fault of your own, through everything that you do to try to stay with it is life-changing, and it's excruciating. And just so, while we have the opportunity, if there are any vets out there going through this, it is possible to get through. It is very possible to get through. It's not easy and at times, but keep going, because what we're about to get into next, I think you guys will, and gals, you'll all see that it can be done. It may take 9 years to get to the point where you want to get, but it's worth it. It is so worth it. And if any of you guys ever want to reach out to me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Justin Legg. I'm on Twitter at Gorilla Frog, Instagram at Gorilla Frog. Find me. I'll talk with you. I mean, I do it all the time with people going through transplants, cancer, depression, alcoholism, you name it. People reach out to me for whatever, and I'm more than happy to talk with people. So stay with it and give me a call, write me, whatever. I'll make the time for you.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. You're an amazing guy, dude. You're an amazing guy. That's I mean, it really leaves you speechless. What all you've gotten through. But all right. So tell us after.
I can't give up on life.
You can't.
What is so? How is life now? I mean, what is? You mentioned 9 years now. I saw. I mean, your team never quit. Tell us a little bit about that. You're speaking, right? You are training. You just got done with the training right before this.
Yeah. So, I've done all kinds of things in the past 9 years. 8 months after my lung transplant, I walked my first half marathon. 11 months after the transplant, not even a year, I climbed Denali, tallest mountain in North America. Didn't make the summit, wasn't expecting to, but I made it about 8,000 feet higher than most of the high altitude pulmonologists thought I would be able to make it. So I made it up to almost 13,000 feet.
Wow.
No oxygen. Nope, no oxygen. Passed out a couple times on the way up to that last camp, right around 12,000. You know, I've done 2 more half marathons since then. I've met the family of my lung donor, met his mom and his 2 sisters, and his sister's little boy. You know, went catching lizards around Disneyland with his with my new little sister's son. I met her at the end of the 3rd half marathon that I did because I was raising money through Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to try and name a research grant in his honor. And we were successful. We raised $54,000. Got it named after him. His name's Jared McKinley Carter, and which I didn't know anything about him when I climbed Denali. And any of you know the history of Denali, it used to be called Mount McKinley. And here it is. My donor's middle name is McKinley. Really odd, amazing circumstance. After those, I said I went and got my master's degree 2 years at Johns Hopkins. Since then, I've been working as an energy consultant, helping the federal government with, alternative energy and, resiliency in their energy infrastructure. Met up with, Operation Enduring Warrior. Done 3 Spartan Beasts so far. The first year I didn't think I was going to be able to do it because my back was hurt. And so I stayed back at the camp while everybody went out, and then I got bored and I was like, screw this. So I went trudging all over, the course trying to find them. Didn't do any of the obstacles or anything, but was able to meet up with them at one point and walk it back. And I ended up probably walking longer than the rest of them, but I didn't do any of the hills. And second year I went down with them, did a whole course with everybody, and the hills were kicking my ass. I mean, they were just destroying me. Stop like 3 or 4 times on the way up, have to lay down, catch my breath. I think it took us something like 10 hours or 9 hours to complete the course. There was points where I was just bear crawling up a hill. It was awful. Like I said, my lungs were only still at that point, 8 years later, only working at about 35 to 40% of the normal oxygen intake that I should be getting. And that was contributing a lot to my depression, that my doctors had said, this is it. This is what you got. You're not getting any better. I mean, sorry, not everybody's lungs come out great. And I kind of happen to be one of the scenarios where the lungs came out pretty bad as far as functionality, but they're stable. And only 20% of the people with a double lung transplant live to 8 years. So passing that mark was a big deal.
Yeah. Well, you told me something at the race, man, that literally, because I was asking you, you were telling me about the previous beast, and you were telling me how it was kicking your ass, the hills and everything. And you told me that through that year of training and nutrition, you were able to increase your lung capacity quite a bit and be a lot healthier. So, do you attribute it all to just good nutrition and training? And how are you slowly but surely, because you have goals, man. You have goals. You're constantly trying to improve yourself, and you're literally not stopped by all this circumstance that has happened to you. So, and how do you constantly, even though and mentally, man, it must have been crazy for you, you keep that strong attitude and that strong, I need to get better for myself, for my family. Like, what do you do to get better? Because, I mean, obviously the doctors are not helping much.
Well, to be honest with you, I was turning to alcohol too much, dealing with my depression. I mean, it seems to be like the go-to for a lot of vets. it's almost like it's encouraged in the service to drink hard and party hard, and then that turns into bad coping habits when we leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I was drinking too much. I was starting not to care. I'm like, all right, well, I'm stuck. I got this. This isn't going to get any better. It's not going to get any worse. So why even try? Because I've been trying my ass off for 7 years. And, doctors had been telling me, this isn't getting any better. You got what you got. Be happy about it, which is a really tough thing to say to somebody who had been such a high-performing individual, or even not. I mean, that's what you got, and you have no hope for getting better. That's the exact wrong thing to tell a person. Because in this past year, I finally said, you know something, I gotta take control of my health. I have to do something for me. I have to own this. It's my problem. I didn't create it, but it's mine now. So I got to own it. I got to control it. And so, like I said, I started eating better. I lost a little bit over 20 pounds, which that alone should help with getting some more oxygen. Just because I didn't have so much fat in my belly that my diaphragm had to push down against. And so it could expand my lungs more. Started doing, more exercise. In July for my 41st birthday, said, you know something, I'm going to give myself a present. I'm going to stop drinking. And the original plan was to not drink for a year. But when we did the Spartan Beast, it turned out so good that, something, I had a few celebratory drinks there. And then I just had a couple over Thanksgiving with, my brother-in-law. So then we keep it for, no drinks for, the rest of the year. Unless it's a super special occasion that really, really warrants having a drink. And even then, it's just, keep it mild.
Well, you're doing it now for the right reasons, right? I mean, it's not going to the other side. You're rather celebrating your accomplishments at that point.
Yeah. It's like, I really actually enjoy the taste of whiskey. I don't drink it just to get drunk. Before where even though I enjoyed it, I was drinking it with the sole intent of just getting drunk and trying to make my problems go away. Answer wasn't the bottom of that bottle. Might as well move on to the next one. Sooner or later, I'll find the answer. And that's just a terribly backward way of trying to solve the problem. So I did that. And then I'd been talking to this guy for about 3 years. He contacted me on Facebook because he had heard about me through social media somehow. He's a trainer. And I've been contacted by a lot of people who thought they knew how to help me get better, or they had a program. My first test with everybody is, tell me what you know about all my medicine. Here it is. Here's the list. He was the first guy that could answer questions about every single medicine. And he knew how they worked. So over the years, he's been developing this company he's calling the Triathlon Institute. And it's really amazing what he's doing. But he put the program together, the specific type of workout, which exercises, how long, what intensity, all that stuff, with the sole purpose of trying to get me better, trying to help me increase my lung capacity. Right. And I've been doing his workouts for about 3 months before the Beast we just did. And I got a lung test about maybe a week or two before we went down to do the Beast. And I've been feeling great. I've been feeling a ton better. But all of a sudden, that test showed that now I'm getting 60% of the oxygen that I should be getting. And I only have 60% of the lungs. So in effect, what lungs I have are working at 100%. And what's more is that, my medicine interferes with metabolism to a certain point, and I'm anemic because that medicine tries to keep my blood products slowed down so that it doesn't attack my body. So I shouldn't be able to carry all of that oxygen. So really now, my lung tissue is working at over 100% of what lung tissue I have. It's really amazing. And it's, I think maybe Pablo, I may have told you this. I know I told somebody, but I think it was you.
Yeah.
That going through all this shit that I've had to go through for 13 years since I got the leukemia, and even the last 9 years of, maybe 10 years of not being able to breathe right. Going through all of that has made this so much more worthwhile. To have to struggle that long and that hard and be told no, and be told you can't, you never will, never, 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 no. And that has always been the thing that you want to get me to do something, tell me it can't be done. Tell me specifically that I can't do it. And now I've gotten it back, and I'm going to see if I can get above 60%. Man, even if I could just get it to 62%, that would be amazing. Trying to curb the F-bombs here.
Dude, the way you told it to me, and I will never forget it, because I was next to you, man. We did this whole thing for 9 hours. All our team, Mandy, everybody did it together, and dude, you made it a point to do all the obstacles. At one point, you were running a little bit, and I could hear you. I could hear you breathing, especially on the tough parts. I can hear you breathing loud. But you kept going, you kept at it, and the I guess the defining moment for me at the race was we were done with the race. It was already nighttime, and we got our medals and everything, and you were just grabbing like a Fit Aid and stuff like that, and I asked you, dude, so how did your lungs feel? And you told me, like I said, something that I'll never forget, man, which was, you said, my lungs are fine. They weren't a problem today. My legs are now my problem. Give me 2 years, I'm going to run elite. And I was like, what? Like that just doesn't make sense. I mean, you got people that will never do one of these races for excuses like, I am not fit enough to actually do a obstacle race. And here you are, I mean, just ecstatic that your lungs were at 60%, and ecstatic of the fact that now you can improve from that, Yeah. That just impressed me so much, man.
So yeah, the lungs are no longer the limiting factor. Now it's the legs and the back. So I got to keep working on my legs and back until they get strong enough that my lungs are the limiting factor again, and keep working through until I get the lungs improved. And it's just going to be this cycle of back and forth, muscular endurance being the limiting factor, or, lung capacity. And, just keep going back and forth and stretching whichever one needs to be stretched at the time.
And for people that are just tuning in, we've had almost an hour with Justin and his amazing story as a Navy SEAL and then cancer survivor, Graft-versus-Host Disease. You broke your back along the way, and you kind of omitted that because it was not so big deal. And now, man, you've shown us this story of resiliency and fighting and mindset of never quitting. So I really thank you, Justin, for spending some time with us today. I truly think that if we all had your mindset at points where we feel like quitting or we feel like making something an excuse, things would be so much different, because the perspective you bring and the message that you're putting out there just with your story, just with what you're telling us, that, it hasn't been easy. It's been tough, but if you never quit, then you can reap the rewards. And I think now you're reaping the rewards of that very thing that you never gave up. You kept going. People told you, no, man, you can't do this. Doctors told you probably what they felt was the deal, the reality or the stats or whatever. And you're all about beating the odds, man. So I appreciate you sharing with us today.
Oh, thank you very much. And just to kind of put this into perspective. So when I came back to the DC area to do my master's degree, I was originally treated at Walter Reed Bethesda. I went back to see that doctor that originally treated me for leukemia. I found out I was her first patient as an attending physician, as an attending oncologist. And she had originally told herself when she saw my results, damn it, my first patient, and he's going to die. Because she saw what kind of cancer I had. Her first patient, she knew I was going to die. And there I was, 7, 8 years later, in the office, gone through our transplant, having gone through getting new lungs. Oh yeah, I had face cancer somewhere along the way too. I had to get dug out of my nose. It was skin cancer, but face cancer sounds cooler. And there I am sitting in her office BSing with her, and she couldn't be happier. And I've been contacted about 3 times on Facebook from people who were part of my care team at one hospital or another along the way. I'm not going to mention which hospitals or who, because they're actually not supposed to say this, but there was somebody in a test that was talking to me, and when I thought I was, when it looked like I was going to die to everybody else. And he said, man, I loved how cocky you were and how arrogant you were, that you were just going to get past this. And he just thought it was such a damn shame that somebody with such a strong attitude was going to die. And then another nurse was saying, some nurses were drawing straws to literally in the nurse's room saying, well, who's got to take them to the next test? Because they thought once I left the support of the room with the machines there and getting wheeled through the hospital with just an oxygen tank, that I was probably going to die on the way to the next test. And just the direness of my situation, it never seemed that way to me, because it was just always, what's next? What's the next obstacle? Conquer it, take it down, keep going. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And I can't emphasize enough how much just tying every little bit to, just taking all those little chunks, and every chunk, if I do this now, I'm going to win. I don't know when I'm going to win, but I'm going to win. It might be 13 years from now, but I'm going to win. Right now I feel like I've won.
I think you have, man. I think you have. What does the future look like for you, man? What challenges do you have planned, or what are your goals, career-wise and exercise-wise and stuff for you in the future?
For me right now, it's career is, just whatever keeps us afloat. I'm not really so concerned about becoming, a manager or, making, hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything like that. It's whatever keeps us afloat, whatever gives me the flexibility to be happy and enjoy life, with my friends and my family and my wife, and for me to keep going, keep trying to press the boundaries. So it's definitely the Dallas Beast is on the schedule for next year. And whatever other events we can squeeze in here and there, just working out, just trying to get more energy back. One thing I think I would love to do, just for the hell of it, is get into like a local exhibition mixed martial arts fight.
Nice.
That's what I started with my rehab after my lungs. I did MMA, at a local gym for like 2 years. Relearning how to fight, because I got to learn how to fight, harder and faster for about the 45 seconds that I can fight.
Yeah.
Well,
we thank you really for spending some time with us, sharing your story. If somebody's watching this, guys, I thank you also for offering your support and your help and just your story to anybody that might be going through hard times, that might be recovering from cancer or going through it, or a vet that, might think that tomorrow is not an option. And you've shown us through just this hour that we spent with you that it's always an option. You know, it's always about what's next and keeping that mindset and our heart. You know, I feel your heart in this whole time that we spent with you, that, you know, you never let yourself quit. And that's something that I admire a lot. So, man, thanks so much for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. And, you know, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share it. And just want to reiterate, you know, if there's anybody out there watching, you know, that feels hopeless or just feels down or just needs a little pick me up or needs some advice on how to get through these things, you know, I got a lot of tricks up my sleeve. You know, feel free to reach out to me on social media if you need to, or through a friend that might know me. On Facebook, it's just Justin Legg, Legg. On Twitter or Instagram, it's Gorilla Frog. If you come to my Instagram feed, prepare to be offended. Sorry, it's nothing personal. But like I said, I like to joke through everything, but really I'm here to help anybody who needs it, and I will do my best to make time for you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate your story. And man, I look forward to run a beast with you soon.
Sounds good.
Good. You're awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you soon, man. I'm sure so soon, and we'll keep you in touch with some challenges, and hopefully I can see you fight soon, man. That'll be amazing.
That's probably going to be about 2 years, 3 years down the road. But it's going to be weird seeing a 44-year-old guy jump in the ring with a 22-year-old guy.
Oh, if I was rooting for anyone, man, it would be you, sir.
Probably get my block knocked off, but what the hell? I've been knocked out before.
I did that, right?
Yep.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for your service.
Awesome, brother.
Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Speaking, guys.
God bless.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
You guys have a great day.
Thanks, brother. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.